recording and streaming.
Okay, hello, welcome everybody. We are going to be speaking today about the Mezuzah. Now, the Mezuzah is a very, very special, obviously holy document, and what it does is, it's very interesting. One of the things I love about the Rabbi, excuse me, is that there are various rabbis that speak maybe like in a flowery language, that they're gonna like tell you interesting, almost like, chop you, get you in through this or that. The Rebbe was very, very accurate. Today I put out on my little Farbrengen group, it's called, the idea is that Moshe Aaron, Moses and Aaron, are truth and kindness. So Moses represented truth, right? He was very exact with the truth. And Aaron represented kindness. Now, kindness and truth are not really the same thing, because a person who's kind is focused not on the truth, they're focused on compassion. Compassion doesn't really care about the truth. And the truth, in a certain sense, doesn't really care that much about, it doesn't care that much about, it doesn't care that much about, what was I saying? It doesn't care that much about compassion in a way, because truth is really focused on doing what is right, and compassion is more focused on helping the person. It doesn't matter, does the person deserve it, does it not? This is kind of the way it goes, is truth and compassion. So in life, we actually need both. And this is really one of the most important concepts in life itself, which is that a person, to function properly, needs to both have truth as well as compassion. So you have many, many different ideologies that they're going to come across and say, wow, we are the truth, right? But those ideologies are not going to necessarily be compassionate. I'm the truth, but do I also have compassion? On the flip side, we also have some people that are very compassionate and they let everything slide. So both of those situations are not good. This is, of course, the famous idea of chesed and gvura. Chesed being just love and gvura being strictness. And putting them together is where you have a healthy balance. And life, as I like to say, spirituality is more an art than a science. You're never going to be fully perfect in terms of always having the right amount of compassion, always having the right amount of truth. It's not, none of us are angels. Somebody like the Lubavitcher Rebbe, maybe had this perfect balance. But the average person is not going to have a perfect balance. We're never going to be perfectly imbalanced. So what are we actually doing? We're always balancing ourselves. We're getting better at balancing these two contradictory and complementary things. And that's a very, very important thing in life, which is learning how to balance ourselves with both. But it's very, very important, critically important, to know that you have to have both. Because ideologies that are just about truth, or at least their truth, to take it to an extreme, look at what communism did. Communism said, we have the truth. And to a certain extent, people don't realize, but this is what's happening. All radical movements, it says this in the Talmud, that the radicalism, extremism is really the same thing. But the person is an extreme right or extreme left, it's really the same. And any Jew who is extremist, either for the right or for the left, is making a very big mistake, because extremism is, in a certain sense, like fascism, like Nazism, like communism. Like Islamic radicals, they put their ideology beyond humanity. Everybody must submit to this idea, and unless they submit to this idea, whether they don't deserve to live in certain circumstances, or maybe need to be re-educated in other circumstances, but their fundamental approach is one of tyranny, which is why it's interesting. My wife asked me the other day, how is it that quote-unquote liberals are siding with Islamic terrorists? Like, it doesn't make any sense. But the truth is, there's a guy, his name is, I forgot his name, but anyway, he has a line. I don't want to say the line because it's a little bit harsh, but basically he claims that behind liberalism is really tyranny. It's really, and there's a truth to that. The truth is that the ideology has overtaken its humanity. Now, the flip side is also a problem, where humanity overtakes the ideology, right? So that's when you can have a place like America, where everybody's allowed to do whatever they want, and before you know it, everybody's going crazy, the amount of people that are killing themselves on suicide and drugs because nobody gave them some kind of structure. I remember speaking to this guy that became religious, and I said to him, how do you feel about, the religion? He was a very bright guy, quite a successful guy. He says, I love it. It gives me structure. So a person that didn't have, I see you're nodding your head, but a person that grew up without structure, religion is amazing because not only is it not, sometimes people that grow up in the religion, they think, oh, the other guy, he's got it good. The other guy, he's able to chill out and do nothing, and he doesn't have to do the Shabbos and kashrus. But no, the other guy, he's got it really bad because he doesn't know what to do with himself. And you have the structure that's giving you a stability and giving you a foundation. Somebody once told me a very beautiful story that there was a great tzaddik, there was a rabbi that was friendly with the Roman emperor. And the Roman emperor said, you Jews, you got so many rules and rules and rules. What's up with all the rules? So he took him and he told the emperor, and the emperor had a lot of power, so if he didn't like the Jews, it could be a problem. So he says, Your Highness, I'd like you to show me Rome as we look out from the rooftop. I said, okay. They went to the roof of the beautiful palace. You can imagine what the Roman emperor's palace was like in Rome. And over there, he showed him Rome, the big, beautiful city of Rome. So he says, Your Highness, I'd like to see what's right below us. He says, Rabbi, I'd love to show you, but it's a little dangerous. If we go to the edge, we actually could fall off. So the rabbi says, it says in the Torah that asiso Michael legagecho. You have to put a guard railing on your roof. Now, let's say we actually had that guard railing. You know what we could do? We could put our hands on the guard railing, and we could lean over, and we could look directly down. So when a person doesn't have a structure and they don't have rules, it doesn't free them. It makes them imprisoned to their fear. But when a person does have rules and does have a structure, they can hang on to that structure. And that's why in relationships today, never before in human history, I think, have people been so free and so poorly, not having good relationships. So what's the reason for that? Because when there's no structure, there's no boundaries, so you have two people, it's like imagine you take, two blobs of ink. You have pink and you have red. And then you put them together. And now it's a mix. I don't know who I am, you don't know who you are. And so how are we meant to have a healthy relationship? But if you know that you are the female, it's very interesting. We live here in Israel, and I get to observe many, many, many different cultures. Israel is the most multicultural community in the entire world. It has cultures, we're all Jews, but we have cultures from everywhere. 2,000 years in Iran will give you a bit of an Iranian culture, 2,000 years in Yemen, 2,000 years in Russia. It gives you a bit of a culture. So I have to say that the healthiest people that I see just off the bat, the healthiest people are the Hasidim. The Hasidim have a culture, and we know, and to some extent even those, I'm Chabad, we're more open. The Hasidic groups that are less open than me, that are really like, okay, you're going to marry them, those people have the best relationships, the healthiest families, the least divorce rates. If anybody thinks that they're coerced, they're not coerced. You look at the women, they're very happy to be women. They're happy to be mothers. They're happy to be grandmothers. You look at the relationship between the husbands and the wives. I have a friend who went to a very preppy school in Boston. So one of his non-Jewish friends says, oh, you Jews, you're so patriarchal. He says, so you've actually never visited a Jewish home before. Is that what you're telling me? Because you see very clearly that We're actually more matriarchal than we're patriarchal. The women have tremendous, they're very much, I don't want to use the word dominant, but they're very much the queen of the home. And so the point is that the structure and the rules behind it, obviously the rules have to be holy rules and good rules, and God made the rules, so they are. But it's those very rules themselves that create the foundation that allows the love to flourish. So I like to say that I'm a man with a lot of experience because I've been married twice. And we live, whether we like it or not, somehow the permissiveness of the culture influences us. And certainly I realized, and I try to implement, to be, obviously I'm a religious Jew, but to be super religious when it comes to the way that God says a relationship should go. Because I realized that those laws, those boundaries are actually there to give us the best relationship. They're not demeaning the relationship, they're creating the relationship. Healthy fences or good fences make good neighbors. And in a society where there is no me and there is no you, and we're one big happy family, it's Animal Farm. Some nutcase comes to the top. Obama did it, not exactly sure if others, but they say, okay, I'm the king and everybody has to follow me. And that's what happened in communist Russia, which killed 100 million people, including 3 of my great-grandparents. The point is that we have to know that we have to have both of these aspects in life. We have to have, on one hand, an unconditional love for ourselves and for everyone else. And on the other hand, we have to have an unconditional subservience to God and to the Torah. And you have to have both. Your right hand, let's call it, is the hand of love, and your left hand is the hand of strength. And you have to, like the American eagle, it's got, you know, it's got the, what is it? I forgot what it is. It's like some kind of symbol of peace in its right hand.
Olive branch.
Oh, thank you. An olive branch in the right hand, and it's got the, you know, spears in the left hand. And just to say something that's very, very interesting about the American government, you know, there are a lot of young people that have been brainwashed against America, including America itself, courtesy of the Russian disinformation. They've done a good job. I gotta say to the KGB, thank you. You know, you've done your job well, and may you get buried very soon. But in any event, the story is that the American founding fathers were totally against government. They hated government because they were persecuted by government. But they had to make some kind of a system. So basically they gave the states a lot of rights beyond the government, but there had to be an army. And with time, the U.S. federal government has overstepped its boundaries as much as it can. It's just the nature of power plays. But what was the first reason they made an army in the United States? Does anybody know?
It was because basically Muslim jihadists in Tripoli were taking merchant ships for jihad reasons. Right?
Yep, that's what it was. It was in Tripoli. The Muslim people, they were pirates, exactly like there are now. It's no difference. And the only difference is that at that time, the American government went in and they fought them and they destroyed them and they brought back their hostages. That's the only difference. And now we're in a time where America is pressuring Israel against returning hostages, many of them American citizens. It's unbelievable to understand the times that we're in. It's at times where the rot, particularly with Obama, because I think Obama, being a Muslim himself, at least according to Islamic law, and definitely pro-terrorism, that's for sure, he got into the mindset of so many millions of Americans, and instead of being proud of the fact that America is from the few countries in the history of humanity that was established for moral reasons. Most countries were established because there was a group of people, there was a king, whatever. They weren't established for moral reasons. The Jewish people is a nation, a country established for moral reasons. America's from the few countries in human history that was established for moral reasons. And the amount of charity, and one of the lines that I like to say, is very easy to say, I'm good and you're bad. It doesn't take any, everybody says that. But how do you measure that objectively? So how much charity are you giving and how much charity are you giving? Because the one thing that you can say is objective truth is the amount of charity that's given. So that's an interesting thing. And not trying to, God forbid, create division, but actually conservatives give more charity than liberals. So it shows that the conservatives, I'm not saying this by massive numbers, but the conservatives are, if you want to use that standard, better people. They give more charity. America as a nation gives much, much more charity than probably any other nation in the continent. Maybe Israel exceeds them. So when you look at it from an objective standard, not like an absolute radical standard, because my way that Muhammad told me is absolutely right and your way is wrong. From an objective standard, America is a very, very holy, charitable place, at least the American values that it was founded on. And so this is, I think it was one of the early founding fathers, maybe Thomas Jefferson, that said, the price for liberty is eternal vigilance. Everybody wants to destroy your liberty. They want to take away your freedoms. And we are in a war now, which is happening on many, many levels. And this brings me back to the subject of Mezuzah. A Mezuzah is a very, very important thing to have to protect us. And I was saying one of the things that I love about the Rebbe is the Rebbe really combined these beautiful qualities of on one hand having truth and the other hand having love, and these two things have to work together. Now, in general, it's good to say that when the two things fight against each other, sometimes you'll have a question, they say, in marriage, you want to be right or you want to be happy? Because it's very easy to be right. And most marriages fall apart because somebody has to be right. But being right doesn't make you happy. In fact, what being right does, usually they say jealousy is being right with a halo. Usually being right, what it is a kind of a way of making us justified to be wrong. That's usually what right is. Because if you really love someone, your desire is to help them out. Your desire is to encourage them. That's why I say that criticism is really a form of abuse. Because if you like somebody, you don't criticize them. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to let them run wild. But it does mean that your educational process is one that doesn't demean them, but rather encourages them into the right behavior, right? So, some people don't like it when I speak badly about Obama, but I think it's very important because leaders have a massive, massive effect. And the language in America before he came was one, like I like to say that, remember when Hillary Clinton came out with the book, It Takes a Village? So Republicans said, no, that means big government. She says, no, it does take a village. They weren't accusing each other. They weren't demeaning each other. They were arguing over ideas. But the reason, in fact, Trump became president was because Obama invited him to a White House dinner and he roasted him. You could see it for 10 minutes. He was humiliating him in a terrible way. And so he got up from the table. He said, I will be the next president. So he has himself to thank. But really, that's his subconscious desire of creating division. Because a person that feels, he wrote a book, Dreams of My Father, a person that feels empty, a person that feels abandoned and malcontent, they become jealous of people, and therefore we come up with mechanisms. We all do it. It's a human nature. I'm not demeaning him. I'm saying if I was brought up in the same way, I had the same problems. His grandfather called his mother Sandy. He wanted her to be a boy, so things were not healthy from get-go. So if I had his problems, I'd maybe be worse than him. But the point is, we can't accept that just because a president speaks in a way, and let's be honest, Trump also can use a bit of a language educational thing. He's totally incorrect in many of the ways that he demeans. It's just that thank God that most of his values are more aligned with what we would call Judeo-Christian ethics. But the bottom line is basic decency, basic humanity, basic respect, basic. I remember I was on the train. On a bus. So in America, we're blessed with many immigrants from Latin America. They're hardworking. I'm very impressed with them. They're not spoiled babies, complaining. They get to work. They move on in their life. And I heard this lady, I don't know if she's talking to her sister, to her daughter, whatever it was, and she was like giving her a lecture on the phone. She says, it's called respect. You have to have respect, So they're not like, oh, the sweet Americans, just like, oh, they just let everything slide. This is the way it is. This is the way you behave. You have respect for the other person. That's the way it goes. And somebody was saying the other day that we live in a time, in fact, it's been predicted that before Mashiach comes, there'll be a lot of chutzpah in the world. The world will have a lot of disregard for basic norms of respect, and that's not appropriate. According to the Torah, if you see a person that's 70 years old, you have to stand in front of them. A non-Jew, right? The guy could be worshiping an idol. You have to stand in front of this person. Why? Because after 70 years, he gained some wisdom. You know a thing or two about life. So we have to respect ourselves, respect each other. Big problem in the media, cousin Zevi once said this in a speech, is that it makes people think that they don't matter, right? You're what? In the olden days, you were a person in a shtetl, there were 100 people, 300 people, so you mattered. But now you're an avatar in a game being played by 700 billion people. So it's a very unhealthy. A human being has to have a sense that they matter, that they're important. In today's day and age, we can see that parents become so much more important, because who's the one that gives the message that you matter? It will come from parents. So let us focus now on the Mezuzah aspect of life. I was saying one of the things that I love about the Rabbi is the Rabbi was a very truthful person, very loving but very truthful. And whenever he would quote something, it wasn't just to make you a religious Jew. He was doing it because this is in your interest to hear. And he speaks about the Mezuzah, he quotes from Kabbalah, and he says that the Mezuzah, what it does is it actually the Mezuzah protects us from what's called Shin Daleds, which are demons. There are negative forces in this world. Just to give you an understanding, it says for every person there are 70 domesticated animals. For every domesticated animal there are 70 wild animals. For every wild animal there are 70 birds, a lot of birds. For every bird there are 70 Shin Daleds. For every Shin Daled there are 70 angels. So there are a lot of things that happen in this world, and these things are negative forces, and the negative forces, we actually create these forces. I don't know if you know this, but if a person is angry, there's a story with the Baal Shem Tov that once he went to somebody's home and the person was shouting at his help. Baal Shem Tov said, had I not known whose home I was in, I wouldn't know who I was looking at, because the Shin Daled says a person that gets angry, all the fires of hell cover them. And actually you create this force. And this is what we've said before, very interesting, that in the very beginning of time, I think that everything you need to know you can learn from the Garden of Eden, or the very beginning story or stories of the Torah. So the very beginning of time, Cain got jealous of Hevel. In fact, it says that they were born with twin sisters, so they married their sister. So Hevel was born with two sisters, so he got jealous. Then he got jealous that God took the fire. So jealousy was the first major sin. In fact, it was jealousy of God even, that the snake said that you're going to be like God, and God's holding out on you. So Cain's face fell. So God said to him, why are you upset? If you're going to repent, everything will be fine. And if you don't, at the doorway, the sin is crouching. Listen carefully to the line. At the doorway, the Pesach Chatas Reva, the sin is crouching. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean that a sin is crouching at the doorway? Because whenever we make a sin, we cause a negative force to come into the world. And this negative force is our own offspring. There's a person here that had a near-death experience, and when he went to heaven, he saw his good deeds and his bad deeds, and they were like different angels, like white and dark. So they asked him, what did they look like? He said, they looked like me, because they were in a way like his avatar, right? We're creating our own avatar. So it's very, very powerful to realize that we are creating all the time angels, and we're creating the opposite of angels. And so those opposite of angels are really bad entities, and they want to harm us. And in fact, if they can get us to sin more, they get more energy. This is why in life we get addicted to certain things, and anger is a terrible thing, because people are often addicted to anger. We should really do a class on anger. They don't realize they're being angry, not because people are making them angry, but because they feel a certain sadistic and narcissistic high when they are angry. And so everything of Judaism is here to make us into compassionate and sensitive people. The food that we eat is coming from compassionate animals. Everything, you're not allowed to slaughter an animal, like a chicken. It's like a kid in its mother's milk. I think like a animal and its child in one day, cook a kid in its mother's milk. These are all things of savagery. In fact, there's a mitzvah to send away a mother bird if you're going to take the chicks. Why? Because you shouldn't be insensitive to the feeling of the mother. So even though there is permission to eat food, but it has to be done with compassion. Even to just pluck off a leaf of a tree for no reason, you shouldn't do it. Because that tree, that life has life. The previous Rebbe was once traveling with his son, and his son was deep in thought, and he absentmindedly was taking a little leaf and kind of doing with his hand. So his father said, we just spoke about how everything has a soul. Who says the soul of that leaf, and who says your soul is so much more important than the soul of that leaf, which is a very profound thing to say to a human being. So one of the things that Hashem does in this world is offer us protection from the dark side. God says, see, I have placed before you life and death, good and evil, choose life. And it's literally death. It's not a joke. The dark side wants us dead. It's very, very simple. And the sooner we realize that, there's this Jewish reporter in The Guardian, he says, our grandparents knew something that we need to relearn, that people want us dead. It's very, very simple. You know, we forgot about that. Oh, they just want a state. No, they don't want a state. They want to kill Jews. Iran doesn't want energy. They want to kill, they want to blow up the world. That's what they want. And so the sooner that we get into the realization that there really is darkness in this world, and again, not to judge it, but to say that it comes from a sense of jealousy. And jealousy, look, people, God forbid, even kill themselves. So where does that come from? That's the tyranny of the ego. The ego is unhappy with the person, and it makes the person kill themselves. Unbelievable. Hate is as crazy as love. A person will give up their life for love, and they'll give up their life for hate. These are not sensical forces. They're emotions that can overtake the person. Just like drugs, the person gets addicted to drugs and gives up their life. Why? Because his love for the drug is so much. And so these forces, hello, how are you guys? Good to see you. So these forces are very powerful, and they are going to try to literally harm us. And therefore the Mezuzah is a protection. The Mezuzah protects us. I'm not going to go into the stories. There are countless stories. There's a story of just a friend of mine who basically, his mother had a slip disc, and she wrote to the Rebbe. The Rebbe said, check your Mezuzah. And, sorry about that. And basically, it's the word b'shiftacha. B'shiftacha means sitting was messed up. When she fixed the Mezuzah, she got immediately better. So how does that work? Was God punishing her for not having a good Mezuzah? The answer is no. The Mezuzah, the Rebbe says, like going out into war. You better have a helmet, right? So also the Mezuzah is a helmet, a spiritual force field. I have a friend, I don't know if I said the story before in this forum, but his girlfriend wasn't Jewish, and she was able to see auras. And so effectively, when she put up the Mezuzah, there was a little shindalet inside of him that didn't get along with her. And she saw a light come out of the Mezuzah, and the light spread. Remember, there's somebody that's not Jewish and a very rational girl. She wasn't making it up. And the light spread, and it forced this shindalet away. So Mezuzahs literally are spreading an energy field, a light that we can't see. There's another lady that I know, again, not Jewish, but she could see auras. And I asked her about the aura of the Mezuzah. She said a similar thing, that it spreads out a very powerful light. So the Mezuzah is a very important thing. Everybody needs to get their mezuzahs, particularly now we're in a time of a war. You've got to check your mezuzahs, make sure your mezuzahs are kosher, and we have to, ideally once a year, the time of Elul, every once in a while, you should check your mezuzahs, make sure they're kosher, because they are protecting you. And, okay, we'll just look if there are any questions. David, any questions?
So there was a question/comment on YouTube.
Yeah.
Nicole says, everything happens because of humans. God's last animal creation. Will reason prevail? And then she adds, as far as I understand, it was done in time to have this type of people so that humanity can succeed in these days if it can go without nuclear or physical war. but that was a comment. The question is really, quote, everything happens because of humans, God's last animal creation, will reason prevail?
Right, right. Okay, so you're asking a very, very good question. And obviously, you're a person of faith, and you are concerned about the reality that we're in. And there is a lot of basis for both of those ideologies. You know, I'll tell you how I feel about it. I've done a lot of talks on this, and you should look through some of the talks on Mashiach. But basically, I do believe that we're heading to Mashiach. And effectively, you know, when CNN came to interview the Lubavitch Rebbe, there was a whole buzz once that he's the Mashiach, Messiah, and they came to interview him, and he said, "What's your message for the world?" He said, "I already printed it in all the newspapers." And then he said that the Messiah, the Mashiach, is already on the way. From our part, we have to add in the realm of goodness and kindness. The reporter said, "Are you saying if we add in goodness and kindness, he'll come sooner?" So the Rebbe said, "Immediately." So they're both true. On one hand, the Mashiach will come. We will enter into a time of universal peace in a miraculous way. There's no question that whenever God gives a prophecy, it will come true, particularly a positive prophecy. But there's also another truth, which is that our actions do matter. But part of the solution to the problem is not thinking that the whole universe has to come right. Until the Mashiach comes, there will be elements and there will be forces of evil in the universe, not even a question. The Rebbe says the Arabs will not make peace with the Jewish people until the coming of the Mashiach. Now, we have seen that many Arab countries, to their credit, for whatever reason, the Arab Spring, the Arab Winter, they realize that they're their own problem. They have made peace. But be that as it may, the Arabs will not en masse. There will be terrorism until the Messiah comes. There will be arguments. There will be division because people have egos and they haven't overcome them. And whatever the reason is, we're not going to go there. However, on an individual level, everybody really can steer the ship forward because each one of us is a DNA, is a microcosm of the macrocosm. And so really, for you to make the world a better place, for you to improve yourself, not worrying so much about the global reality. The hippies had a line, think global, act local. It's a good line. So you fixing, because the DNA of the world is in every part of the world. That's why you could heal the body. You put a medicine in one part, it affects the whole part. You could do reflexology on your foot, you could affect the whole body. So you really working hard and telling God, I'm going to give you everything to bring the Mashiach. I'm going to do my best. I'll be a good person. I'll be a kind person. I'm going to work hard, figure out the truth, whatever it is. If you're not Jewish, there's something called the 7 Noahide Laws. You can go to my website, KabbalahWisdom.org, and check it out. God's Guide. I don't know. Is it in the is the book and is the link to the website in the description automatically or not? No. Okay. So maybe we'll do that. But the bottom line is that we are in a check it out. Go to Chabad.org/7laws. It's an easy one to remember. Chabad, CHABAD.org/7laws. But this is the obligation of the world. So as we dedicate our lives, and we really all have to do this. You know, there is a story, right, probably in this area where a Jewish revolt was against the Romans, and there was a rabbi in the city of Beitar who was a very big tzaddik. And I think he had fasted for 40 years, maybe eating only at night. And maybe I'm mixing up two stories, but the basic essence is the same. And basically, it was his merit that the Romans were not able to win. And somehow there was somebody that ratted the spiritual merit and caused the situation that this person would be murdered, and that took it all down. So one person's merit saved the whole country. The Baal Shem Tov says that if the whole country is a bunch of liars and criminals, but one person is truthful and tells the truth, he saves the whole country. So my message to you is that both is true. God will bring the Mashiach, but we can mitigate some of the suffering. Are we going to do it on a global level? I doubt it, to be honest. Is there going to be some kind of real leader that's going to stand up and galvanize us to sanity? To be perfectly frank, I don't think so. But can you and I be sane? Absolutely. And that's what it says in Kabbalah, that before the Mashiach comes, we'll have to use the wisdom in our inner heart to remain sane. So my message to you is be positive, because God sees everyone and everything, and He wants us. Ultimately, what it's really all about is about growth. It's about choice. It's about you growing. And as we do that, and as we take serious our mission, our purpose in this life, and we do it well, we bring the Mashiach. Okay, any other questions? Any other questions? Oh, Ilana, good to have you with us.
Yes, hi.
We thought you dropped off the face. Huh?
Free time.
Okay, we could probably stop the stream.